Chapter 241, Indifferent Academy. After observing quietly for a while, Anduin discreetly left the scene. During the remaining 2 months of the 4th school year, after finishing his work each day, Anduin would spare some time to cast the disillusionment charm and observe the movements of the young wizards in Slytherin House. This allowed him to reacquaint himself with the students from his own house, and he meticulously recorded a large number of names and corresponding evaluations on his recording board. Sometimes he would act like a stalker, silently following a few Slytherin students, quietly observing their daily lives and interactions. During this period, he witnessed many scenes that he found quite interesting. For instance, he watched the entire process of 2 couples discussing their relationships. He also noticed some introverted students who spent their days attending classes, reading in the library, returning to the common room to do homework, and then resting. Some of these young wizards didn't utter a single word all day, which Anduin found quite astonishing. He even observed an internal chess and card competition organized by a group of lively Slytherins. At the same time, there was a group of aggressive students playing pranks on other houses. Most of them were pure-blood wizards, but there were also some half-blood wizards involved. These pranks included targeting students from other houses, being pranked in return, engaging in private duels, and participating in a large-scale prank brawl with Gryffindor. They were caught, and Slytherin lost over 100 points because of it. Anduin even saw Snape reprimanding them with a livid face. He discovered that Slytherin wasn't just targeting Gryffindor. They also had conflicts with other houses. These weren't simply inter-house conflicts, but rather personal disputes between students. However, there were more frequent clashes between some Slytherins and Gryffindors, which led to animosity between the 2 houses. This animosity caused some Gryffindors to prank Slytherins who were not involved in the disputes, and vice versa. This easily escalated conflicts, forcing many students who were not interested in fighting to join in, causing the situation to snowball. After being caught, they would be quiet for a while, only to resume fighting later. Anduin even witnessed 2 young wizards, one from Slytherin and one from Gryffindor, who had been good friends since they entered the school, turn against each other due to the conflict between their houses. The internal cold violence within the house was endless, with the biggest divide being between pure-blood and half-blood wizards. The departure of Travers last school year had eased tensions slightly, but the conflict between them had become more severe, with no trust between the 2 sides. There was also a split among the pure-blood wizards, stemming from differing ideologies. Some pure-blood wizards disliked causing trouble and resented other pure-blood Slytherins for dragging them into conflicts. The split among the half-blood wizards was due to personality differences. Slytherin was different from other houses. Many dormitories were in the dungeon, and most students had single rooms, leading to little communication. Those with lively personalities found it difficult to interact with the more introverted students. Coupled with the fragmented atmosphere within the house, Slytherin students tended to be selfish and self-centered, leading to increasing isolation. In fact, the Snake Court is not entirely composed of single-room dormitories. The arrangement is adjusted based on the number of students in the college. The total number of students at Hogwarts typically ranges between 400 and 800, with each house accommodating around 100 to 200 students. However, due to the war with the Dark Lord a few years ago, many wizards fled the UK, leading to a decrease in the local wizard population. Consequently, the number of students at Hogwarts dwindled. In Anduin's class, the total number of students at Hogwarts is around 40, significantly lower than previous years. Even after the Dark Lord's disappearance 2 years ago, the Death Eaters' riots prevented a significant increase in student enrollment. This school year, however, has seen a notable rise in the number of young wizards enrolling. This increase reflects the success of Minister Boudinau's measures and powerful publicity, which have boosted the confidence of UK-born wizards and attracted many to return to their homeland. Slytherin House has always had the fewest students among the 4 houses, currently totaling just over 100. This number allows for individual dormitories for each student. If Slytherin had 200 students, there would be a need for multi-person dormitories. The distrustful atmosphere within the house makes it difficult for students to find friends, except for those in the same grade who attend classes together. These small groups are primarily divided by grade, blood status, and personality. Anduin has observed that Slytherin House's current state is due to several factors. Firstly, no one has stepped up to unite the students and guide them towards unity. This is not surprising, considering Anduin dismissed 3 prefects last year. The most important leader, Yaxley, went astray and eventually fled. Wilkes and Millie were not natural leaders, and under Anduin's suppression, they became cowardly. Quayle, another potential leader, shows little interest in the house and rarely participates in daily patrols or school-wide activities. Without strong leadership, the students are disorganized, and the situation is deteriorating. Secondly, there is a lack of communication channels among the young wizards. The previous harsh management by the Purity Committee caused senior students to lose trust in those they were unfamiliar with. Lower grade students, without the support of senior students and prefects, struggle to integrate into campus life and form small groups for mutual support. This situation can easily lead to a vicious cycle where indifference and division become contagious. Conflicts within these small groups often go unmediated, leading to further divisions. Recently, Anduin noticed that 2 groups of first-year students who used to play together had a falling out, resulting in the group splitting into 2 separate factions, each ignoring the other. End of this chapter. Chapter 242, The Laboratory. The current situation at the Academy is largely due to the accumulation of negative emotions. Some young wizards had conflicts with students from other houses, which then spread to other students within their own house, causing widespread anger. This anger, along with complaints, distrust, and other negative emotions, has exacerbated the indifferent atmosphere among students in the same house. Some have even reached the point of mutual hostility. Faced with this situation, it's no wonder Snape has a headache. He doesn't have much time to spend at the Academy now, but if he doesn't intervene, Slytherin could be completely divided within a year or 2. That's why Snape sought out Anduin, hoping he could resolve the situation that he had indirectly caused. "I've basically figured it out," Anduin said, closing the notepad in his hand and slowly standing up from his desk. "It seems that if we want to solve the problems in the house, we can't do it without some strong measures. I hope that next school year, the grown-ups in our house will be able to accept my methods." Anduin sorted out his thoughts and walked out of his dormitory. Today was the graduation ceremony of the 4th school year, and another school year had passed before he knew it. Upon arriving at the auditorium, Anduin observed the students in Slytherin chatting happily. To an outsider, it might seem like there was no problem at all. However, only those within Slytherin knew that students only talked with their close acquaintances and ignored others outside their circle. Anduin ended his final dinner in this strange and lively atmosphere. This year, Ravenclaw won the House Cup again, and Slytherin's points remained stable in 3rd place. The students in Slytherin didn't react much. They were used to it. They were just relieved that Gryffindor was at the bottom, so it wasn't too embarrassing. Some even looked at the Gryffindor table triumphantly, as if to despise them for being worse off. Seeing this situation, Anduin felt very speechless. How could the second-to-last house have the face to mock the last one? He even felt like he was watching a magical reality show. Then he looked at Vivienne, who was stuffing a big chicken leg into her mouth, and felt even more tired. "Hey, big sister, this is already the 6th chicken leg you've eaten. Can you still manage?" Ever since Vivienne and Charles started dating, she had been indulging herself, eating and drinking happily all day long, and even refused to listen to Anduin's advice about losing weight. It seemed that Vivienne would need some work next school year, otherwise she might become unhealthily overweight. After the end-of-term ceremony, Anduin boarded the return train the next day. This time, he was not alone. He brought Kiki and Hog with him. Kiki had already recognized Anduin as her master and only obeyed his orders, while Hog regarded him as a benefactor and always followed his lead. Fortunately, Anduin now had a place in the wizarding world to accommodate them. Taking Kiki and Hog back to his residence at number 277 Diagon Alley, Anduin spent some time preparing the second bedroom on the third floor as their living quarters. Anduin's own bedroom was very large, enough to divide apart as a study, and he had moved all the laboratories to the basement. Since the underground warehouse had been completely emptied, he had enough space to set up the test area. He specially arranged the warehouse area and the bedroom in the basement into two laboratories with different functions. He even sealed a wall to create a more secure and functional space. Separated from the corridor, the room was dedicated to studying spells and magic. Anduin had converted part of this space into a vertical shooting range, allowing him to practice and test new spells daily. Given the room's large area, it was an ideal setup. The adjacent room, originally a bedroom, was smaller than the spell laboratory, but still quite spacious. Anduin arranged several workbenches here, equipped with balances, bia, curs, and other experimental instruments. This room served as an operation room for brewing potions and crafting alchemical props. Numerous semi-finished alchemical items were scattered across the console. He kept the original bed to ensure he had a place to rest during long research sessions. Additionally, he installed a magic circle to ventilate and regulate temperature and humidity. The protective and energy-gathering circles in this room also functioned as the control center for the building's entire network of magic circles. To support his ongoing research and experiments, Anduin purchased a large amount of materials and equipment upon his return. He also acquired rare materials smuggled from overseas by Karkaroff, consuming significant resources and wealth. Last summer, he had amassed over 5,000 gold galleons and a substantial amount of materials, which allowed him to invest heavily in experiments and alchemical projects this year. Although he used many materials, he conserved the most precious ones, such as refined mithril, ulam steel, and Aesir mithril. The primary depletion was in common materials, so the impact was manageable. However, the rapid consumption of galleons was concerning. For instance, acquiring a top-equipped rune workbench from Cairo cost him 3,000 galleons, as such equipment was unavailable in the UK. Including the purchase of basic materials and utensils, he had already spent 5,000 galleons this year. If this trend continued without new income sources, Anduin's funds might be exhausted by graduation. Moreover, Anduin was no longer alone. He had to cover the equipment and food expenses for Kiki and Hog, along with numerous research projects awaiting investment. One priority was studying thinking and memory magic, a promise he made to young Neville that he had not forgotten. However, his expertise in this area was limited, and he lacked data and experimental materials. Additionally, developing the Wild Thunder rune was a significant expense this year. Testing materials that could carry the rune, along with assessing power and loss, had consumed substantial resources. Other ongoing projects included in-depth studies of rune control, the development and application of blood magic, and continuous training, all requiring long-term testing and investment. He needed to verify his inspirations through further experimentation. End of this chapter. Chapter 243. Design Drawing. Anduin had been feeling a bit anxious lately. Despite having a considerable amount of wealth, he still found himself short on funds. Reducing his expenditures wasn't an option, so he needed to think of ways to increase his income. He had originally planned to start a business after graduation, so it was time to plan ahead. A month after returning to his home at number 277 Diagon Alley, Anduin went to his alchemy laboratory as part of his routine. He sat down at his workbench and casually opened a large piece of parchment. It depicted half of an alchemy apparatus. He stared at the blueprint, deep in thought, contemplating the direction of his next project. Since he was venturing into business, his first choice was naturally alchemy products, given his familiarity with them. Diagon Alley was a prime commercial location that he couldn't afford to waste. Just as he had joked with Miss Purnell, he planned to open a company there to sell alchemy products. To succeed in business, he had to consider supply and demand. Rather than retailing daily alchemy items, he preferred to do business directly with the Ministry of Magic. Becoming a stable supplier for the ministry would be far more lucrative than selling individual life props. the ministry would likely be interested in products that were highly practical, consumed a lot of energy, and significantly improved work efficiency. Anduin had already laid some groundwork. After communicating with aurors like Moody, he realized that his tactical equipment had a strong market potential. Moreover, doing business with an organization like the Ministry of Magic required good relationships. It was unrealistic to expect others to buy his products solely because of their quality. Fortunately, Anduin had helped the Minister of Magic before, and Minister Budnor would likely be receptive. The new director of law enforcement was Professor Burns' sister, making her an ally, and Moody, the head of the Auror Command, was practically a guaranteed supporter. With a potential market in mind, Anduin now needed to focus on the products. The protective amulets, flash amulets, and sonic boom amulets he had shown Moody could serve as his main products. These standard items were consumables that needed frequent replenishment. By mass-producing them, he could slightly reduce their duration, ensuring that even if an amulet wasn't used, it would only last for 3 months and would need to be replaced. This strategy would guarantee continuous sales and cash flow. After all, he was the creator, and no one else knew the true duration of these items. Higher quality tactical equipment, such as anti-magic handcuffs, phase shoes, and tactical vests, would be invaluable to aurors and strikers on the front lines. Whether the Ministry of Magic bought them in bulk or individuals purchased them privately, these items could bring in substantial financial resources. Anduin also planned to develop some attractive equipment for the ministry's field personnel. He had long had ideas for this. He and Moody had previously discussed the common problems faced by frontline troops. Anduin intended to create targeted equipment to address these issues. However, his current concern wasn't the products themselves, but the production capacity. He placed his hand on the parchment, thoughtfully considering how to use the instrument he was developing to solve the production capacity problem. To create a stable alchemy item, 3 essential elements are required: materials, runes, and magic power. Materials. When selecting materials, 2 key factors must be considered: magical performance and magic power storage capacity. The stronger the magical performance of the material, the closer the engraved runes will be to their original magical strength. Therefore, for the same alchemy props, high-quality materials are preferable due to their superior strength. The magic power storage capacity determines the upper limit of the inscribed rune and its duration. For instance, casting a fire spell might require at least 30 units of magic power. Without the appropriate material, it would be impossible to create props capable of casting such spells. Runes. The accuracy of rune inscription is crucial and more complex than it appears. Many finished alchemy props are not flat surfaces, making it challenging to inscribe runes on curved or irregular surfaces. Continuous and stable input of magic power is necessary to complete the inscription process effectively. By magic power. Magic power is the energy that drives the entire magic item. However, unless excellent materials are used, the magic power in many alchemy items will dissipate over time. Some alchemy items require periodic magic power input to activate, such as the throwing amulets made by Anduin. Fortunately, Anduin's alchemy props have a rechargeable function, allowing for magic power replenishment, which significantly extends their service life. For mass-produced alchemy products, this level of consideration is not always feasible due to the inherent loss before replenishment. Production challenges. Creating an alchemy prop involves several steps: cutting the material, shaping it, and maintaining the magic power for inscription. Even for a skilled alchemist like Anduin, this process is time-consuming. If each product were handmade, it would be inefficient, explaining why many alchemy workshops produce limited quantities. To address this issue, one could either focus on high-end products, making 1 piece per year, or recruit employees to assist in the process. Anduin aimed to sell consumable equipment commonly used by aurors, necessitating a higher production volume. However, hiring additional staff would increase costs, and pricing the products too low would reduce profits, while pricing them too high would decrease sales. Ember, solution, magic lathe. To solve the production capacity problem, Anduin decided to develop the equipment outlined in the blueprint before him. He envisioned a magic lathe capable of independently processing alchemy props. This machine would cut, shape, and accurately complete the engraving work on its own, effectively setting up an automated production line in his underground laboratory. This setup would allow for the seamless production of standardized props 24 hours a day. The material for this standard equipment would be simple, avoiding high-hardness materials like Ulam steel. The machine's power would divide and suppress semi-finished products with a fixed shape. Compared to handmade items, machine-shaped finished products would likely be more accurate and consistent in specifications. End of this chapter. Chapter 244. The Husband Who Everyone Shouts For, Seeking Monthly Pass Recommendation Ticket. The process of engraving runes is quite troublesome, mainly because the lathe cannot be used for dark engraving operations, and its engraving accuracy is relatively poor. After all, compared to humans, machines are still relatively rigid. However, this can be managed initially. The standardized equipment can be engraved using clear methods, and the area where the runes are inscribed should be made flat. The beautifully shaped amulets in his hands are all made of metal, like coins. They may not look great, but they serve their purpose. What worries him most now is the magic power. Since it is an automatic magic lathe, it cannot lack energy. To engrave runes, magic power is required. At least during the engraving process, magic power must drive it. But after Anduin's calculations, the energy-absorbing magic circles at home can only extract and store a limited amount of magic power, which is not enough to support a lathe for long periods. Do I have to input magic power into the lathe myself? Anduin thought, feeling overwhelmed. The mana needed to drive the lathe, plus the mana required for the alchemy props engraved with runes, means that the mana transmission and control of the magic machinery cannot achieve very high efficiency, and there will definitely be some losses along the way. Calculated this way, using a lathe to make an ordinary protective talisman requires 3 times the magic power that Anduin consumes to make a talisman himself. Even if he, Chi-Chi, and Hog were included, they wouldn't be able to work for long without exhausting themselves. Moreover, if they gave all their magic power to the lathe, they wouldn't have any left for themselves. This method is obviously not feasible. Then hire someone to replenish the magic power. This is more cost-effective than directly hiring skilled hands who can help engrave runes, but he doesn't want to expose the secret instrument of the lathe. With the magic lathe, he can mass-produce alchemy equipment while maintaining a price advantage, so that even if someone imitates, they won't be able to steal his business. After all, if the selling price of alchemy props is lower than the cost of piracy, no one would bother to make pirated versions. As Anduin was worrying about the drawings, the air in front of his workbench suddenly stirred, and then a house elf in plain clothes appeared holding a tray. It was Chi-Chi who had apparated. "Master, it's lunchtime. Would you like to take a break?" Chi said, bouncingly placing the tray on an empty space on the workbench and reminding him softly. "Oh, thank you." Anduin froze for a moment, turned his head to look at the clock next to him, and realized that he had been thinking all morning, even past lunchtime. "Today, according to the menu you taught me before, I made malkshuang with Tebo warthog blood, braised lion's head, dry stir-fried green beans, and rice," Chi-Chi said, carefully placing the tray in front of Anduin and introducing the dishes with a somewhat proud tone. "Well, it's well done," Anduin praised sincerely, after tasting a few mouthfuls of the dish. Chi-Chi had become more confident and lively than she was at the beginning, and her cooking skills had improved rapidly. Since arriving in Diagon Alley, Anduin had basically handed over his daily life to her. It should be said that she was truly a house elf. Her housework magic was so superb that even Anduin had become accustomed to and reliant on such a life. "By the way, where is Hog? Is he still competing with that sofa on the 2nd floor?" Anduin asked jokingly about Hog's situation while eating. This husky had always been restless. Since he followed Anduin to his house in Diagon Alley, he had been anything but calm. At first, he just patrolled around like a boss, and then he started scurrying around in Diagon Alley. At the beginning, Anduin's neighbors were quite fond of his cute, silly dog. They would play with him from time to time and occasionally feed him some riats. However, their affection waned after a series of unfortunate incidents. Hog, the dog, bit off Miss Purnell's table leg next door, knocked over 2 rows of Ollivander's wand racks, bit a Gringotts goblin, urinated in front of Leon bookstore for 2 consecutive days, and kept drooling while staring at the round-faced chubby chicken in the Ela Owl store. Eventually, Hog became a nuisance that everyone in Diagon Alley wanted to avoid. Even Tom would exclaim, "Merlin's beard," upon seeing him. Hog was now banned from entering any shop in Diagon Alley, which left Anduin extremely embarrassed. In the first few days, Anduin had to lead Hog around to apologize to everyone, much like a parent apologizing for their misbehaving child. Since then, Anduin kept Hog under strict supervision, not allowing him to run out and cause trouble. Hog was truly a handful when left to his own devices. However, being cooped up indoors made Hog restless, and he began causing trouble inside the house. He would either compete with the tables, chairs, and benches, or find the pots and pans displeasing. Recently, he seemed to have developed a particular dislike for the sofa on the 2nd floor, attempting to bite it into pieces. Fortunately, Anduin knew magic, and these minor damages could be repaired with a wave of his wand, so he let Hog bite as he pleased. However, Anduin dared not let Hog into the basement, fearing he might damage the magical equipment or magic circles there. He seems to have changed his behavior today. Instead of biting the sofa, he's been scratching at that thing called a desk lamp that you brought back. Cheeky recalled the scene she saw in the morning and explained in detail. "What nonsense! I bought that equipment for research. It better not be broken." Anduin quickly stood up, realizing he needed to warn Hog not to be too destructive. Anduin had a habit of buying electrical appliances from the Muggle world. He was interested in studying their internal circuits, wiring, motherboards, and so on, hoping to gain some inspiration for developing his lathe, rune array, and alchemy props. There was no electricity in Diagon Alley, so these appliances couldn't be turned on, and it was unclear whether they were broken or not. After hastily finishing his meal, Anduin took Cheeky and apparated to the 2nd floor. As soon as they appeared, they saw Hog in action. Hog was arching his hips, pouting his buttocks, and facing the tall lamp Anduin had bought. He activated the floating cannon on his tactical vest, twisting his buttocks to adjust his aim. When Anduin apparated, the floating cannon on Hog's back had already started to flash with streaks of lightning. "Don't," Anduin shouted, feeling a sense of dread. Hog, hearing Anduin's voice, knew he was caught in the act. Panicking, he tried to quickly retract his magic power, but it was too late. The floating cannon on his back fired anyway, and a slender electric beam struck the desk lamp squarely. End of this chapter. Chapter 245, Discharge Test. It might have been because Hog finally withdrew his force. After the magic current hit the lamp, it flowed freely up and down along its metal rod, and the entire electric light turned on just like that. Although the light flickered on and off, it was indeed lit by the current emitted by Hog. Of course, the light didn't last too long. After flickering for a few seconds, the desk lamp went out again. At this moment, Hog seemed like a child who didn't realize he had made a mistake. He tilted his head, stuck out his tongue, and then looked at Anduin with wide-eyed innocence, as if to say, "What's the matter? Did I do something wrong?" Seeing this scene, even Chi-Chi covered her eyes with her hands, speechless. The scene was too fake. But after a while, Chi-Chi didn't hear Anduin's scolding voice, so she looked up curiously at her master. At this time, Anduin didn't show a reproachful expression. Instead, he stared at the position of the desk lamp, rubbing his chin and looking thoughtful. "Master?" Chi-Chi didn't want to interrupt Anduin's thinking, but Hog was looking at him eagerly, and the entire 2nd floor was a mess. Although it seemed that Hog didn't damage the desk lamp, other places around it were quite crowded. "Hog, how much magic power did the current you just emit output?" Anduin asked calmly, ignoring Hog's feigned ignorance. "Huh? Magic power?" Hog tilted his head to one side, his thoughts gradually drifting. At first, it was just a silly expression, but now it looked more and more real. "What magic power? I don't know. The plasma cannon you fired just now is obviously not at its maximum output power. Recall how much magic power you used," Anduin said sternly, making Hog break out in a cold sweat. "I only know that I was using up my power," Hog admitted, no longer pretending. But I really don't know how much magic power was used. I feel that it is probably more powerful than the normal plasma cannon. More than half of the time, the magic power used is roughly a quarter of the usual. Well, I see. We have to test it again. Anduin nodded in satisfaction after getting the answer he wanted. He then turned to Hog. Clean up this place quickly. If I see you messing around with magic indoors again, I'll take your tactical vest away. Hog felt extremely depressed upon hearing this. He thought Anduin had forgotten what happened before, but he still remembered. However, he didn't dare to disobey Anduin, so he had to comply. After teaching Hog a lesson, Anduin quickly walked to the desk lamp, lifted it up, and then apparated back to the underground laboratory with the desk lamp. After returning to the basement, Anduin drew out his wand, carefully concentrating the magic power. Soon, a not-so-bright electric light popped out from the tip of the wand and came into contact with the desk lamp. The desk lamp flickered again, but both the brightness and the duration were less than what was seen from Hog earlier. It seems that some magic power can be added, Anduin nodded, then adjusted the magic power again and cast the spell. Since he only had this desk lamp, he was afraid of using too much force, so he adjusted it little by little. After adjusting the magic power 4 or 5 times in a row, he finally managed to keep the lamp on at a higher brightness. The reason why he suddenly became interested in this desk lamp was that Hog's act of lighting the desk lamp brought him inspiration. The conversion between electrical energy and magic power might directly solve the problem of the source of magic power for him. When he was studying the Wild Thunder rune, he had been focusing on its role in combat, so he had always neglected that it could have other applications. The various functions in life and assistance were also present. The electricity generated by Wild Thunder was composed of magic power, which led to an intriguing question. Could ordinary electricity, like that in the Muggle world, be converted into magic power through inversion? This thought struck him after seeing Hog directly power electrical appliances, such as desk lamps, with electric current. If electric energy could be reversely converted into magic power, it would solve the energy problem he had been worrying about. Compared to the Muggle world, electric energy is very abundant. With a machine like a diesel generator, electricity could be generated continuously. Inspired by this idea, he decided to explore a method of transformation. However, although lightning runes like Wild Thunder can generate electricity, they differ somewhat from normal electricity, especially the kind found in the Muggle world. Therefore, he planned to focus his research on transforming magic power. The next day, Anduin took some time to go out and bought a civilian fuel generator and a few barrels of gasoline. He intended to use the generator to test the conversion of electric energy. After all, he had only seen that the electricity generated by lightning magic could affect electrical appliances, but he didn't know how effective Muggle-generated electricity would be. Upon returning to the laboratory, Anduin started the generator and eagerly began the current conversion test. His first task was to check whether electrical energy could be directly converted into magic power. Since both belong to elemental energy, they might be interoperable. Anduin connected the wires from the generator to a high-voltage voltmeter, coupling capacitor, measurement circuit, discharge calibrator, and double-pulse generator to create a discharge unit that could accurately measure voltage and power. Finally, he converged these into the double-headed fork-like generator in his hand. The test method was simple. Anduin built a basic energy-absorbing magic circle and let the generator discharge at the circle to see if it could directly generate magic power. After several tests, Anduin realized he had been overly optimistic. The electric energy released by the engine had no effect on the energy-absorbing spell circle. He also performed discharge tests on several alchemy amulets, but there was no interaction. Whether it was a magic circle or an alchemy tool, the electric current either passed through directly without fusion or was repelled. Of course, it doesn't work, Anduin muttered, shaking his head calmly. He had been mentally prepared for this result. If electric energy and magic power could be directly transformed into each other, it would have been discovered long ago. Next, I'll try the Wild Thunder rune. This rune should be able to react with the electrical energy in nature, as it was formed by absorbing a large amount of thunderstorm charge when it was created. End of this chapter. Chapter 246, Visiting. When it was Anduin's turn to test the Wild Thunder rune, he first took out a crystal ball designed to temporarily hold the rune. Using his magic, he constructed a complete rune and poured it into the crystal ball. Instead of immediately using the discharger to activate the rune, Anduin raised his left hand towards the crystal ball. A silver snake slowly emerged from his cuff, his spirit-binding snake. The spirit-binding snake brought its head close to the crystal ball, then slowly opened its mouth and began to suck. Gradually, the Wild Thunder rune within the crystal ball started to fade visibly. Anduin didn't drain all the magic power from it, leaving a portion of the rune intact. He did this because of the unique properties of the Wild Thunder rune. A complete Wild Thunder rune can store a large amount of lightning attribute magic power, capable of compressing almost unlimited electrical energy. This is similar to his God Destroyer, which compresses a large amount of magic power into the rune, transforming it into lightning that deals immense damage. However, the higher the lightning density in the Wild Thunder rune, the more difficult it is to charge it. Anduin realized that if he directly used the complete Wild Thunder rune, the generator might not be able to drive the generated current into the rune. By extracting part of the magic power first, he made it easier to observe and interact with the rune. Anduin then took the generator and pointed it at the Wild Thunder rune to start discharging. As he expected, natural electricity reacted with the Wild Thunder rune. The current surging between the double-headed fork of the generator seemed to be attracted to the rune, slowly and continuously flowing into it. As the electricity flowed in, the originally dim Wild Thunder rune began to brighten. After several tens of seconds of continuous input, the light on the Wild Thunder rune became more dazzling than when it was first summoned. At this point, the current in the generator stopped flowing into the rune, indicating that the electric energy density in the rune was relatively saturated, and the generator's pressure was no longer sufficient to continue discharging into it. Anduin then tested ordinary thunder and lightning runes to see if they had similar properties. The results showed that only the Wild Thunder rune was special. Ordinary thunder and lightning runes had no reaction to natural electricity. Despite the complexity, Anduin was very satisfied with the results. The test confirmed that the Wild Thunder runes could indeed absorb natural lightning. This meant that his previous idea could be realized. By supplementing electric energy into the Wild Thunder rune and then extracting magic power from it, he could effectively convert electric energy into magic power. Although the process was cumbersome and seemed feasible only for Anduin, who possessed the Wild Thunder rune, it was a significant breakthrough. The next step was to test various solutions to find the method with the least loss and highest conversion efficiency. For the remaining month of the summer vacation, Anduin secluded himself in the basement, dedicating himself entirely to experimenting with the converter. He tested different materials for the converter, various structures for the rune, whether to engrave it on the material or store it directly in the energy storage crystal, and the impact of the instrument's size and specifications on conversion efficiency. Anduin didn't have any shortcuts for this task. He could only rely on the exhaustive method, testing each material and each technique. As a result, he spent the entire summer vacation working on it, but he couldn't find a satisfactory converter solution, let alone complete the lathe that was still in the blueprint stage. It became clear that finishing the design and manufacture of the lathe within the summer vacation was impossible, so he decided to continue this part of the work at Hogwarts. Anduin calculated his progress and realized it would take more time to complete. He decisively suspended the experiment for now. With 1 week left before the start of school, he planned to visit friends he hadn't seen in a long time, such as the Longbottom family and the Weasley family. Since returning to his home in Diagon Alley, he had hardly left the house, spending all his time in the laboratory, even more intensely than at Hogwarts. He decided to take this opportunity to relax. Anduin spent half a day shopping for some magical toys. The alchemy props he made himself were too dangerous to be given as gifts. He bought toy brooms for Neville, Ron, and Ginny, and a complete set of Quidditch equipment for the older kids, including windproof glasses and other gear. He knew the Weasleys were crazy about Quidditch. Then he asked Kiki to look after the house and took Hog to visit the Longbottoms and the Weasleys for a few days. He didn't dare leave this mischievous dog at home. He had to take it with him. The Longbottom family hadn't changed much, but little Neville had grown a bit. It was evident that Augusta had taken good care of him, ensuring he had a rich intake of nutrients. Little Neville's current physique could be described as strong. What pleased Anduin was that Neville still remembered him after almost a year, which was quite good for a young child. Augusta was still very strict with Neville, perhaps because she wanted him to be strong and capable. Even though Neville was only 5 years old, he already appeared extremely well-behaved under her strict teaching. Anduin had a pleasant dinner with the Longbottoms and played with Neville for a while before returning to Diagon Alley, leaving under Neville's reluctant gaze. Visiting the Weasleys was a more lively affair, as their family was always bustling. This year was particularly special because their second son, Charlie, was about to enter Hogwarts. When Anduin arrived at the burrow, the Weasley children were playing and helping Charlie try on his new school uniform. They had attempted to give Charlie the first-year school uniform that Bill had outgrown, but Bill's old suit was too shabby. During the period when Bill first started training under Anduin, he had worn the school uniform for training, and it had become almost unusable after just 1 year. Later, Anduin bought sportswear for them all, solving the problem of running in robes. Seeing Anduin's arrival, the Weasley children were even more excited. They rushed up to greet Anduin, the older brother, who had won them over with delicious food. Chapter 247, The Weasley Family. "Brother Anduin, you've come to see us!" exclaimed Charlie, his face lighting up with excitement. "Brother Anduin, look how cool Charlie is in his hospital uniform," chimed in the mischievous twins, Fred and George, always ready to tease their older brother. "Brother Anduin, I heard from Bill that you will be appointed as a prefect next year. That's really amazing. How did you become a prefect?" asked Percy, his tone serious and full of admiration. Even Ginny and Ron, who were only 3 or 4 years old, rushed up with their brothers, screaming and circling Anduin. When they noticed the large husky next to Anduin, their excitement grew even more intense, and they immediately surrounded Hog in a flurry of activity. Hog had never experienced such a scene before. 7 wizards, big and small, surrounded him, and his little face turned pale with fright. Of course, his face was already quite white to begin with. In an attempt to scare the children away, Hog put on a ferocious expression. However, he underestimated the courage of the Weasley children. They grabbed Hog, petted him, rubbed their heads against him, and even Ginny, the youngest, clung to Hog's tail and refused to let go. "Wow," Hog whimpered, looking at Anduin with a terrified expression, silently pleading for help. He clearly couldn't withstand the onslaught of so many enthusiastic children. "Don't squeeze it. Why is this little girl so strong? If she keeps squeezing my tail, I'll lose my fur," Hog thought, his eyes growing more helpless and pitiful. "Okay, everyone. Hog isn't used to so much attention. Come here, I brought you all a gift," Anduin said with a smile, beginning to take items out of his space ring. At the mention of gifts, the excited children immediately shifted their focus from Hog to Anduin, their eyes filled with anticipation. Only Ginny, perhaps too young to understand the concept of gifts, continued to hold on to Hog's tail with determination. Anduin had bought a set of Quidditch protective gear and a complete set of ball equipment for each of the Weasley children. Of course, there were no broomsticks included, as they were quite expensive. It had been a long time since Anduin had seen these little kids, and he missed them dearly. This time, he had splurged, spending over 200 galleons on these gifts, with the most precious item being the Quidditch set. A single golden snitch alone was worth more than 100 galleons. Seeing the brand new equipment Anduin brought out, the Weasley children rushed forward, eager to try it on. Charlie, still in his hospital uniform, was the most excited and couldn't wait to put on the gear. After trying out the equipment, their excitement grew even more when they saw the brand new set of ball equipment. They were itching to have a live Quidditch match. Arthur, who had been busy in the burrow, heard the commotion outside and curiously ran out to take a look. He saw his children in a delightful mess. Little Ron was riding a toy broom, gliding back and forth in the air 1/2 meter above the ground, having the time of his life. When he saw Arthur, he flashed a big happy smile, showing off his tiny teeth. Ron's brothers were all gathered around Anduin, wearing uniform leather Quidditch armor and excitedly pointing at a big box, eager to try out the new equipment. Arthur's beloved daughter, Ginny, was still tugging on Hog's tail, engaged in a determined battle with the fluffy dog. Despite Hog's efforts to move forward and shake her off, Ginny held on with all her might, her small feet leaving furrows in the ground as she resisted. Seeing this scene, Arthur was about to say something, but his older children seemed to have activated some sort of switch, their excitement reaching new heights. The box in front of them suddenly burst open with a loud bang, and a black shadow shot into the sky. "Look, that's the quaffle. George, aim at it. I'll get the broom." Fred, one of the twins, exclaimed excitedly to his brother as he watched the quaffle bounce high into the air. Merlin's beard, "Stop immediately. Be careful, or the quaffle might hurt your younger siblings," Arthur yelled hurriedly, his voice filled with concern. George, standing just below, gripped the bat in his hand, his eyes fixed on the rapidly descending quaffle. He seemed ready to make a powerful swing to show off his skills. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. As the quaffle flew over the crowd, it suddenly froze in midair, as if caught by an invisible hand. Despite its desperate struggle, it remained motionless. "All right, don't make your father angry. Now is not the time to play Quidditch. Take off your equipment first," Anduin said softly, controlling the quaffle to fall back into the box. He then turned to Arthur with a smile. "Mr. Arthur, long time no see. It's been a year since I last saw you, Anduin. You seem to have grown taller again. You're 1.8 meters tall now," Arthur remarked, having to tilt his head slightly to look at the strong young man before him. "You're flattering me," Anduin replied modestly. He then glanced at the twin brothers, who were reluctantly closing the box. "Come on, hurry up and come into the house. Yesterday, Molly found out you were coming, so she specially prepared some delicious vanilla tea for you," Arthur said cheerfully, rubbing his stomach. He then turned serious. "Bill, Charlie, hurry up and help your brothers put away their things and get ready to eat. Don't play with this dangerous Quidditch equipment here. And bring your sister back quickly. Didn't you see that big dog almost dragging Ginny away?" At Arthur's reminder, everyone turned to look in Hog's direction. The rivalry between Hog and Ginny hadn't stopped. Hog had dragged Ginny tens of meters away, leaving 2 long, crooked lines on the ground. Ginny, with her tough temper, refused to let go. Bill, the eldest brother, hurried over to take care of his younger sister. He was familiar with Hog and could comfort him. Anduin, knowing that Hog was careful, didn't pay much attention to them. Instead, he quietly took out a bottle of flame whiskey and slipped it into Arthur's arms, raising his eyebrows meaningfully. Arthur glanced around, then cheerfully hid the bottle in his coat. End of this chapter. Chapter 248. News from Fenrir. Time flies. It's been another year. Molly keeps mentioning you whenever she can, and these kids, especially Percy, adore you. He looks forward to becoming a famous hero of the Ministry of Magic, Arthur said, pouring tea in the reception room of the burrow. He discreetly hid the bottle of wine Anduin had given him. "Yeah, I haven't seen you all for so long. I miss you too," Anduin replied, noticing Arthur's attempt to hide the wine. He took a sip of the vanilla tea, which tasted good, and then asked casually, "By the way, Arthur, what happened to the thing I asked you about last time? Moody is always very busy and often can't reply." "Are you asking about the werewolf wizard Fenrir? This guy is well known in the Department of Law Enforcement. In his early years, he often sneaked into the wizarding community, specifically targeting children to bite and infect them, increasing the population of werewolves," Arthur said, shuddering at the thought. He loved and valued children, and the idea of someone like Fenrir existing made him uncomfortable. "I've also heard about what he did in the Forbidden Forest. According to Professor Kettleburn, he discovered the werewolf and then took you and Hagrid to drive him away?" Arthur asked, looking at Anduin with curiosity. "Almost," Anduin shrugged and replied casually. "Ha ha, Moody said he wouldn't believe it for a second. He thinks that after you killed those werewolves, you must have pushed the old professor to take the blame. Arthur laughed, rubbing his chubby belly. It seems that Moody knows me well, Anduin thought. This elite auror was very sharp. To be honest, his handling of the situation was a bit rough, so it wasn't surprising that Moody saw through it. However, Moody also said that it was better for you to handle it that way. Fenrir is not a simple foe. The werewolf community he established has caused a lot of trouble in the European wizarding world. He keeps a low profile, but secretly takes revenge. As for his current whereabouts, the latest news from the law enforcement department is that a week after he escaped in the Forbidden Forest, the French Ministry of Magic sent us information indicating that his activities were discovered in France. This proves that he may have fled abroad as soon as his whereabouts were exposed. This is old news, and you should know it too, Arthur recalled. Anduin nodded. He had been paying attention to the whereabouts of this werewolf wizard, but it wasn't convenient to investigate personally while at Hogwarts. So, he communicated with friends from the Ministry of Magic every once in a while, including Moody, Vanessa, Arthur, and others. He had been obsessed with research recently and hadn't focused on this matter for a while. Since he was discovered in France, he disappeared quickly. This guy has a strong sense of vigilance and relocates as soon as he feels threatened. 3 months later, he was discovered in Romania, involved in several fire dragon smuggling cases. Obviously, he hasn't given up on the smuggling business yet. Because you have been asking frequently, I recently went to the Department of Magical Beasts Management to inquire. It seems that he is active in Northern Europe. Last month, a black market informant reported finding his tracks in Norway. However, no one knows exactly where he is now. His scope of activities is too wide and his footprints are all over Europe, Arthur said, shaking his head helplessly. There is no other way. It seems that this guy is more dangerous than expected. It's a pity he wasn't dealt with directly last time. But in the short term, there isn't much we can do, Anduin concluded, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. Anduin reassured Arthur, there's no need to worry about Fenrir's revenge. He had initially wanted to eliminate Fenrir completely, but the man's erratic movements and swift escapes made it unrealistic to track him down quickly. Anduin could only sigh and hold on to his frustration. Shifting his thoughts, he looked up at Arthur. By the way, do you have any clues about the silver spear I asked you about earlier? Arthur took a sip of tea to moisten his throat before responding. You mean the organization with the same name as the former Silver Spear Dueling Club? He paused, then continued. This organization is completely different from the well-known dueling club in history. According to the information provided by the European Ministry of Magic, the current Silver Spear is an underground organization active on the European continent. Its only connection to the historical dueling club is that its core leadership consists of survivors from the original Silver Spear Club. Arthur leaned in closer to Anduin and whispered, as if sharing a common secret. Now, this organization mainly engages in various smuggling activities across Europe, including alchemy and potion materials, magical animals, and reportedly even the slave trade of intelligent creatures. Has this organization been active for a long time? Why have I never heard of them in England? Anduin asked, his curiosity piqued. This organization has only emerged in the past 10 years, Arthur explained. Their operations are much more rigorous than one might imagine. No one knows who their leader is, and they never personally collect, hunt, or transport smuggled goods. Their business model is quite unique. The Silver Spear facilitates contact between smugglers and buyers worldwide, acting as a transaction middleman and guarantor. The French Ministry of Magic once raided an underground smuggling market, which was said to be operated by the Silver Spear. However, even the black market boss who was arrested knew little about the organization. Arthur continued, according to the information in the dossier, although the black market boss was associated with the Silver Spear, he was merely a subsidiary. The Silver Spear provides source and buyer information, but the actual transactions are hosted by the black market. After the transaction is completed, a portion of the proceeds is handed over to the Silver Spear. However, the black market has no direct contact with the Silver Spear's leadership. The black markets for smuggled goods like these are spread all over the European continent. It's said that if a black market reaches a certain scale, it can contact the Silver Spear for trading authorization. Therefore, many black markets and smuggling exchanges are connected to the Silver Spear. Arthur concluded, "However, I haven't seen much activity from this organization in the British wizarding world. Perhaps they haven't developed here yet." Anduin absorbed the information, contemplating the implications of such an elusive and widespread organization. End of this chapter. Chapter 249, Smuggling Kingdom. So that's why Fenrir has such a detailed list of goods. It seems that this werewolf wizard has at least a cooperative relationship with this organization, and what's more, he may have a deeper relationship with the Silver Spear. Anduin nodded thoughtfully. After Arthur's introduction, Anduin suddenly became interested in this Silver Spear. Their business model is similar to that of an e-commerce trading platform. They only handle channels, not products. No wonder they have been able to get away with it for so long. Moreover, this organization has almost become a brand now, just like the beer billboards in the previous life. As long as you open a food stall, you can make a sign, but you don't have direct contact with the next one, which not only increases popularity, but also ensures safety. Then the Ministry of Magic in Europe didn't want to wipe out this organization? Anduin asked curiously. Although the Silver Spear is well organized, this is the world of wizards after all, and all kinds of magic emerge endlessly. There must be some clues. It's not very clear. The Ministry of Magic abroad is not as stable as ours. The Ministry of Magic in some countries may be chaotic. Arthur shook his head. Oh, how do you say that? Anduin was still quite curious about foreign ministries of magic and immediately asked with interest. Just give me an example. Arthur leaned forward a little, getting closer to Anduin. Do you know the German Ministry of Magic? German Ministry of Magic? Anduin raised his eyebrows, looking at Arthur with a little puzzlement. I'm not very clear about the specifics. I only know that the German Ministry of Magic has been in chaos for decades. This is actually caused by the turmoil in the Muggle world. It is said that their country was divided into two by a wall, and a country was divided. It's the same as two countries. Arthur stretched out a hand horizontally, gesturing against a wall, and said with an exaggerated expression, "Is it the Berlin Wall? This wall divides the whole of Germany into East Germany and West Germany. It seems that it was pushed down in 1989. Does this matter in the Muggle world also affect the Wizarding Society?" Anduin looked at Arthur with some confusion. You must know that even in the Wizarding world, there are still many mixed-race or Muggle-born wizards in it, especially on the European continent, where the density of wizards is higher than ours. The division of the Muggle society has also affected the German Ministry of Magic. Although the impact is not too great, it also increases a lot of internal conflicts, which makes their internal structure much looser than other countries. So the German Ministry of Magic is not strict with the management of the wizarding community. At the same time, in other countries on the European continent, each country's environment is different, and the relationship between each country's Ministry of Magic is also different. Organizations like the Silver Spear, in the eyes of the Ministry of Magic in many countries, are evil criminal groups, but for other countries, they are friends and can be cooperated with. That's why we hang overseas alone. Although we are relatively isolated, we also have fewer enemies. Arthur said a lot in one breath, his mouth a little dry from exhaustion, and he quickly took another sip of vanilla tea. What is the attitude of Minister Budeno towards this Silver Spear? That Fenrir is obviously related to the Silver Spear. Presumably, they also want to extend their hands to British territory. Anduin recalled what Hogg had mentioned. He had seen some smugglers picking goods in that cave. It is possible that the Silver Spear had infiltrated it, and the stronghold of Fenrir might even be a listed company in the black market. It's just that the werewolf's brains may not be very good, and there are some problems with his reputation. He has the habit of eating guests, and he doesn't know how the management of Silver Spear thinks about it. Minister Budnor's will is... Arthur's expression turned serious as he continued. The minister is naturally resolute. She will not allow such criminals to take root in the British wizarding world. Since you discovered the werewolf stronghold, the minister has arranged for the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures to collaborate with Aurors on several surprise inspections. Many smuggled magical animals were indeed seized. Arthur, though not a high-ranking official in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, was the head of an independent department and thus privy to many high-level decisions. Anduin nodded in approval. This kind of organization can have a detrimental impact on the local magical animal ecology. It must be dealt with decisively from the very beginning, or it will become deeply entrenched and difficult to eradicate. By the way, Mr. Arthur, Anduin interjected, remembering the primary reason for his visit, you are the director of the Office for the Prohibition of Misuse of Muggle Artifacts. I would like to consult you about the legal provisions in this regard. Arthur's interest was piqued. Oh, why the sudden interest in this area? Hardly anyone cares about the laws related to Muggle items these days. It's extremely difficult to find someone knowledgeable in this field. I want to know what constitutes the misuse of Muggle items. If I cast spells on Muggle items and turn them into commodities, will that violate the law? Anduin asked, voicing his primary concern. He had been contemplating starting a business that involved processing Muggle items for sale. The craftsmanship of Muggle products was quite good, and their high output could save him a lot of time and production costs. Arthur chuckled, clearly experienced in this area. The Misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office is primarily responsible for restricting wizards from enchanting objects used by Muggles and ensuring they do not return to Muggle hands, mainly to uphold the statute of secrecy. He continued, another law states that it is forbidden to use magic on Muggle items with the intention of adding additional functions. For example, if I want a teacup produced in the Muggle world to learn to speak, and I cast a spell to make it able to speak, then I would be breaking the law. So in theory, using magic on Muggle items is considered a violation of the law, Arthur concluded, taking a sip of his tea with a smile. So strict? Anduin was taken aback by Arthur's explanation. It seemed that casting spells on any Muggle items was prohibited. Seeing Anduin's face turn serious, Arthur smiled. Why, are you interested in studying Muggle items? It's not exactly research. I want to start an alchemy prop business in the next year or two. If possible, I thought it might be more convenient to process some Muggle items directly into magical items. But it doesn't seem feasible now, Anduin said, rubbing his temples in frustration. End of this chapter. Chapter 250, The Godfather. Hey, your idea is good, Arthur said, his smile growing wider. You don't need to be too sad. In fact, this law isn't completely impossible to work around. Oh, what do you mean? Anduin asked, noticing Arthur's relaxed demeanor. He suspected there was another way. You see, this section of the law requires that a Muggle item must be intended for use to cast a spell. If you can prove that you don't actually want it to have this function, it is equivalent to not having an intention to use it, Arthur explained. For example, if I take a Muggle car and enchant it to fly, but I don't intend to use it to fly, it doesn't count as with intent to use, so it's legal. Ah? Are you sure this isn't just a play on words? Can it really work? Anduin looked at Arthur skeptically, then took a sip of the vanilla tea in his teacup. It doesn't matter. Regarding this law, if it doesn't work, we can just change it. Anyway, most of the legal provisions on Muggle items were written by me, Arthur said with a smug smile, shrugging indifferently. Puff! Anduin couldn't hold back his laughter and sprayed out the remaining vanilla tea in his mouth. Fortunately, Arthur reacted quickly and dodged. Ahem! What are you talking about? You wrote the law prohibiting the abuse of Muggle items. Anduin choked on his tea, coughing and staring at Arthur with wide eyes. Why are you so nervous? Arthur looked at Anduin in confusion. Actually, not all of it was written by me. This law has existed for a long time, but many of the clauses in it are relatively old, so I revised a lot of content and added individual supplementary bills. It's nothing, just daily operations. How could the laws of the Ministry of Magic be such a joke? A department head can amend the law at will? Anduin suddenly felt that the world was a lot more surreal. Hey, Arthur sighed. The main reason is that our Office for Prohibiting the Abuse of Muggle Artifacts is still not taken seriously. Now there are only me and Perkins in the entire department, and no one can help us with these legal provisions. Of course, it can only be resolved by ourselves. Why did listening to Arthur's words make it seem like he felt wronged by amending the law alone? Anduin looked at Arthur speechlessly, not knowing how much power he actually had. Anduin hesitated, but couldn't help but ask, can the use of magic items processed from Muggle items in business be legalized and written into the law? Are you serious? I thought you were joking, Arthur laughed. Of course, it's no problem. It's a trivial matter. There have been many people selling cursed Muggle items before, Arthur continued. In fact, most wizards don't know much about Muggles. Even if you cast a spell on a Muggle item, they may not be able to see it. It's like a magic camera. It's actually a magic item developed by Cairo alchemists, but it is often mistaken for an enchanted Muggle item. So as long as it is not dangerous and does not fall into the hands of Muggles, we will not be particularly strict. After all, just dealing with those items that accidentally circulate into the hands of Muggles is enough to cause headaches. The bottom line is that Muggles can't see or hold magical items. I see, Mr. Arthur, Anduin said, suddenly seeing Arthur in a new light. This middle-aged man, who was usually amiable and kind, had a surprising amount of influence. The two continued to chat for a while about Muggle items. Arthur was clearly more interested in how Anduin processed Muggle items. In Anduin's eyes, Arthur was more curious about Muggle items and Muggle life than any other wizard he knew. He doubted whether Arthur could abide by the laws he made. Just as the two were engrossed in their conversation, Molly, who was busy in the kitchen, took a moment to run out. She had a polite conversation with Anduin for a while, and at the same time rejected Anduin's suggestion to help with the cooking. Anduin was helping in the kitchen, clearly wanting to showcase his culinary skills. Meanwhile, the Tzeftiste, Hildren, who had been playing outside, rushed back into the house. Under the guidance of Bill and Charlie, they quickly changed into their protective gear, carefully avoiding their Quidditch equipment. It was evident that they were more apprehensive of Anduin than their own family members. Hogg also entered the living room with the others, but he wasn't alone. Bill had managed to get Ginny to release Hogg's tail, but he couldn't free Hogg from Ginny's persistent attention. Ginny, who had been dragging Hogg's tail, had now taken a new position. She was sitting majestically on Hogg's back, her small hands tightly gripping the hair on his neck, exuding an air of authority. Hogg's expression was one of resignation. He had been tormented by this little red-haired girl, first by having his tail squeezed and then by being ridden relentlessly. Since following Anduin, he had never experienced such humiliation. Seeing Anduin again, Hogg cast a pleading look for help. His boss had previously abandoned him to his fate. However, Anduin was in a good mood now. Noticing Hogg's distressed face, he approached Ginny with a considerate smile, clapped his hands twice, and then opened his arms as if to offer a hug. Ginny, seeing Anduin's gesture, quickly shifted her attention to him. She opened her arms wide and threw herself into his embrace, nestling obediently in his arms. The Weasley brothers were left speechless. No matter how much they had tried to persuade their little sister earlier, she had refused to let go. Yet, Anduin had managed to get her to release Hogg with just a simple gesture. It felt like a slight to the brothers' efforts. But Hogg was the most relieved. Finally free from the little girl's grasp, he hurriedly moved to a corner, wanting to stay as far away from the Weasley children as possible. "It seems that Ginny likes you very much," Molly observed, glancing at her daughter, who was now comfortably nestled in Anduin's arms. "You know, Ginny was born with you around, Anduin. Or perhaps." Molly looked between Ginny, Arthur, and Anduin. "Why don't you become Ginny's godfather? Even though you're only 12 years older than her, you're mature and sensible. When Ginny was just born, you were already like an elder, helping to take care of the children in our family." "Me? Godfather?" Anduin looked down at Ginny, who was sitting obediently in his arms, still sucking on her fingers. An inexplicable warmth filled his heart. Chapter 251. Planning. "If you and Arthur don't mind, I have no problem with it," Anduin said, smiling warmly. He had a lot of affection for Ginny, having been present at her birth in the hospital. He didn't reject Molly's proposal. Besides, his mental age was not much younger than Arthur's, so becoming a godfather was no issue for him. I don't mind. Of course I don't mind. Ginny recognizing you as her godfather puts us at ease, Arthur laughed, clearly pleased with the arrangement. However, this is inappropriate, Bill protested. If Anduin becomes Ginny's godfather, do we have to call him uncle? That's right, we still like to call him Big Brother Anduin, the twins chimed in unison. It doesn't matter, Anduin teased with a smile. From now on, you can call me uncle, and I'll call you brother. We can have different opinions. I don't mind. But we mind. All the Weasley boys rolled their eyes in unison. I mind too. Hog, who was quietly observing from the side, raised his right paw in protest. He couldn't imagine what his life would be like if this girl became the adult's goddaughter. Despite the boys' protests, Arthur and Molly quickly settled the matter, and Anduin readily accepted the role. Ginny, nestled in Anduin's arms, was oblivious to the conversation around her. She only felt warmth and a growing sense of joy, which made her clap her hands and laugh like a silver bell. It seems that Ginny is also very satisfied with her godfather, Molly said with a loving smile, hands on her hips. Seeing this, Anduin gently lifted Ginny up in front of him and stared into her small light brown eyes. Hey, Ginny, say godfather. Jiao, footfather, Ginny repeated with a slight lisp, then excitedly reached out to touch Anduin's face. Anduin moved closer, allowing her to pat his cheeks. Okay, then Anduin will be a part of our family from now on, Arthur said, laughing at the harmonious scene. Anduin laughed too, and then seemed to remember something. A beautifully carved bracelet appeared in his hand. With a thought, the bracelet resized itself to fit Ginny's tiny wrist perfectly. This is a welcome gift from your godfather, he said, gently putting the high-quality protective bracelet on Ginny. The bracelet, made from mithril, contained a 3-layer iron armor curse that could recharge automatically and spiritual protection that could activate on its own. It was originally meant for Anduin himself, but he generously gave it to Ginny as a gift. Ginny's attention was immediately drawn to the well-made bracelet. She concentrated on playing with it, letting out bursts of petite, hearty laughter. Bill watched enviously, knowing that Anduin had many valuable items but had only given him and his siblings brass communication amulets and protection amulets. Seeing his younger sister receive such a precious gift made him a bit jealous. Ginny is such a lucky child to have a godfather who loves her so much, Molly chuckled. By the way, I almost forgot I came out to invite you to dinner. Let's hurry to the table. Anduin enjoyed a sumptuous meal with the Weasleys. He was in a good mood after recognizing Ginny as his goddaughter, so he ate heartily. Listening to the Weasley family chat about Quidditch anecdotes at the dining table, he felt a warm sense of belonging in their family atmosphere. After the meal, Ginny found her favorite big dog, Hog, and proudly sat on his back, scratching his head from time to time. Hog could only run back and forth with a forced smile on his face, obediently enduring Ginny's playful antics. You must understand, Ginny was no longer the little brat she used to be. She was now the goddaughter of the adults. Anduin watched them with kindly eyes, making Hog even more compliant. After spending some time with the Weasleys, Anduin, despite Ginny's reluctant gaze, took Hog and left the burrow. Hog, finally freed from Ginny's playful grasp, seemed relieved. In the following days, Anduin decided to take a break from his research work and relax a bit. He also sent a letter to Karkaroff, asking him to keep an eye out for any news about Fenrir and the Silver Spear. This brief respite allowed Anduin to release the research pressure that had been building up. As the new school year at Hogwarts approached, Anduin prepared for the upcoming challenges. This year was particularly significant because he would be taking his OWL exams. The results of these exams would determine which 7th grade Newt courses he would be eligible to take next year. If a student's OWL test score met the minimum requirements set by the teacher, they could continue to the Newt course. If not, they would have to retake the OWL course until they passed. Students who qualified for a Newt course but didn't need the certificate could choose not to proceed with that course. The OWL exams also played a crucial role in determining future career paths. 5th grade students would have an interview with their college dean to receive employment guidance. Passing the 5th grade OWL exam meant that a student was essentially half graduated. The 6th and 7th grades would offer more free time unless the student aimed to earn more Newt certificates, which would make them even busier. Additionally, Anduin received his prefect appointment letter and badge from Hogwarts. He would now assume the duties of a prefect, responsible for maintaining order and managing Slytherin House. As for his future plans, Anduin intended to spend 1 to 3 years at the academy, helping to rectify it as he had promised Snape. During this time, he aimed to make significant progress in his research on the magic lathe. Ideally, he hoped to officially open his alchemy workshop before graduation, ensuring a stable source of income to support his future research endeavors. End of this chapter. Chapter 252, The Prefect's Carriage. As for the Newt certificate, Anduin doesn't particularly value it. He will probably take a few symbolic exams. If his alchemy business thrives, or if his plans change, he might even graduate without the certificate. After all, the Newt certificate is more important for job hunting, but he does not intend to work for others after graduation. He wants to pursue his own business and research. After graduating, Anduin plans to travel to mainland Europe. Many Death Eaters are still hiding there, and he has always believed in eradicating them completely. Moreover, compared to doing business, directly seizing resources from others is faster and easier. Death Eaters are the perfect targets, and dealing with them won't violate the law. Most of these individuals are pure-blooded nobles and certainly not poor. At the same time, the werewolf mage Fenrir, who remains at large, occasionally keeps him awake at night. Insomnia can lead to sudden death, and for someone who indirectly endangers his life by affecting his sleep, Anduin cannot let him go. Additionally, the illness of the Longbottoms has always been on his mind. While traveling abroad, he can also take the opportunity to gather information on mind magic to see if he can find a cure. Once all these problems are solved, he might finally be able to enjoy his life. But now is not the time to indulge in fantasies. Arriving at King's Cross Station again, Anduin glanced at the prefect's appointment letter in his hand. The letter required the prefects of each house to meet in a specific prefect's compartment after boarding the Hogwarts Express train and receive instructions from the president of the Boys' Student Union and the president of the Girls' Student Union. The prefect's compartment is at the front of the train. Anduin had noticed in the past that the doors are locked to prevent unauthorized entry. The magic door will only open after showing the prefect's badge. I didn't expect that one day I would be able to enjoy this privilege, Anduin mused to himself, then walked into the special car. Upon entering the prefect's compartment, he found that it was not composed of individual compartments like the rest of the train, but consisted of a large bay and 4 compartments. The large bay is an open meeting room with a rectangular table and 2 chairs at the front. There are 2 rows of seats on both sides of the table. It is not very big, but it does not look very crowded. The other part consists of 4 large compartments, decorated according to each house. The interior space is much larger than the compartments in the rest of the train. Each compartment can easily accommodate at least 8 to 10 people. There is a row of ring-shaped seats in the compartment, resembling a round private room in a KTV, equipped with exquisite velvet seats, blankets for warmth, and a round table with ornate carvings in the middle. The compartments are decorated with brightly colored carpets and curtains, and there are wine cabinets and snack cabinets next to the seats. Of course, the wine cabinets are filled with non-alcoholic beverages. Each Hogwarts house selects a boy and a girl from the 5th year to serve as prefects, a position they hold until graduation. Therefore, theoretically, each house will have 6 prefects at the same time, making a total of 24 prefects in the whole school. Some 7th grade prefects leave school for internships early or apply for early graduation. Therefore, such a large carriage can comfortably accommodate 26 people, even if divided into 2 parts. It still looks quite spacious. Although Anduin arrived at the station very early, there was already a boy waiting in the conference room. This person was sitting at the head of the table, indicating that he was the president of this year's student council. Anduin recognized him. It was Marin Macmillan from Hufflepuff House. In the 7th grade, Anduin had joined the Charms Club 2 years ago and he and Marin were considered acquaintances. Anduin, you came so early. I'm so happy to. You become a prefect, Marin greeted warmly, smiling brightly at Anduin. Aren't you earlier? I haven't had time to congratulate you, Mr. Student Council President, Anduin joked with a chuckle. Don't make fun of me. If we were in the same grade, I wouldn't be the president. I'm afraid I won't fulfill the duties of the president because I came so early, Marin replied modestly. Marin, a pure Badger Academy student, exuded honesty and reliability. Anduin sat at the conference table and chatted with Marin. As time passed, more prefects entered the carriage. These prefects were evidently more self-disciplined than other students, arriving before the departure time. Anduin noticed that most of these prefects were acquaintances, many of whom had joined the Charms Club. They nodded politely when they saw Anduin. He also saw Charles, who had become the fifth-year prefect of Lion House, and Oriana, the Ravenclaw, who had become the prefect of Eagle House. As the prefects entered the compartment, they gathered around the conference table. Marin, seated at the head of the table, interrupted their greetings with a smile, drawing their attention to himself. Everyone, please take your seats. The first short meeting before entering school will begin immediately, Marin announced. I'm Marin Macmillan, this year's president of the Boys' Q Student Union and the 7th grade male prefect of Badger Yard. Everyone should know me, so I'll keep this brief. Marin aimed to be concise and efficient, quickly getting to the point. I would like to congratulate my colleagues who have just become new prefects and explain our daily work. He opened a notebook in front of him and spoke loudly. First of all, after the Hogwarts Express departs, prefects must patrol the train's corridor. Every half hour, 2 prefects will be in charge, rotating alternately. Secondly, after arriving at the college, the prefects of Slytherin and Gryffindor must find your dean as soon as possible, obtain the password to enter the common room, and then lead the freshmen back to the common room after dinner. Pay attention to any slow-moving new students and ensure they don't fall behind. Remember the Gryffindor lion cub from last year? He almost got lost. The old seniors burst into laughter at Marin's joke, as the incident was quite famous among them last year. Then there will be night patrols. I will announce this year's patrol route and schedule at the first prefect meeting in the college. The meeting time will be at 8 tomorrow morning in the waiting room near the auditorium. It won't delay everyone's breakfast, Marin continued, pointing to a note in his notebook. Chapter 253. I know you very well. I also remember that we need to write a college work report every month and submit it to the student union. Additionally, we must accompany the deans of the colleges to hold regular management meetings in the faculty lounge. If any dean is absent, remember to convey the meeting details to them. Head Nepe is often absent, so Slytherin House may need extra attention. Although our work seems busy, being prefects comes with many benefits. For example, there is a bathroom on the 6th floor for prefects and Quidditch team captains. It is located to the left of the statue of confused Boris, the 4th door on the side. Marin was clearly very familiar with the duties of prefects and was thorough in every aspect. The rest of the prefects nodded in agreement after hearing the arrangement. By the way, Marin said, glancing at Anduin, Slytherin's 2 7th-year prefects, Wilkes and Kelly, both chose to graduate early, so. Anduin understood what Merlin meant immediately. Wilkes and Kelly, both pure-blood wizards, had been protected by Anduin for 2 years. Now, hearing that Anduin was going to become a prefect, they were likely scared and chose to leave early. This sudden loss of 2 prefects would cause inconvenience in both the management of the house and within the student union. In addition to Anduin, the other Slytherin prefects were 2 6th graders, the pure-blood male prefect Louis Allerton and the mixed-race female prefect Wendy Dart. There was also the 5th grade female prefect, the half-blood wizard Janie Moria. They hadn't had much contact with Anduin in the past. Louis and Wendy had been prefects since 5th grade, but their relationship with Anduin was quite ordinary, mainly due to the split within Slytherin. Louis was considered relatively easygoing among pure-blood wizards and had never provoked Anduin. However, due to the confrontation in the academy the year before, there was naturally some estrangement between the three prefects who were mixed blood and Muggle-born. "It doesn't matter, Merlin," Anduin said with a calm smile. "Although Slytherin lost two prefects, it will not delay the work of the student union." This kind of conversation should have been led by Louis or Wendy, but Anduin took over naturally, and the two sixth graders had no objections. Louis had heard other pureblood wizards mention Anduin and knew how powerful he was. Wendy, with her gentle personality, wouldn't object to Anduin's intervention. "That's good," Merlin said, glancing at Anduin and then at the other Slytherin prefects. As the student president, he was aware of the internal situation in Slytherin. With the current atmosphere in the house, he was worried that something might happen. But now that Anduin had become a prefect, he felt more at ease. Outsiders might not know, but Merlin, who had also joined the Magic Club, was quite clear about the senior in this club. In addition to being a combat hero honored by the Ministry of Magic, Anduin was a celebrity in the Charms Club and the entire wizarding academic circle. The various new charms developed by this junior had been sought after by many masters, including Professor Flitwick, and had frequently left their mark in various academic fields. Marin even knew that at the latest Cairo International Alchemy Conference, Anduin's echolocation mirror was nominated for the International Alchemy Conference's Pioneering Contribution Gold Award. Although this award focused more on individual outstanding contributions, and Anduin's nominated work was co-signed with Professor Burns, he didn't win the award in the end. But Merlin knew that Anduin's abilities went beyond that. He had other alchemy props that had not been announced. If he wanted, Merlin believed that. Anduin was destined to become famous in the alchemy community within a few years. With him around, Slytherin should be in good hands, right? Although Merlin had confidence in Anduin, the sight of the other Slytherin prefects ignoring each other left him feeling uneasy. "All right, that concludes this meeting. If you need to hold an internal house meeting, please return to your respective compartments. I've also posted the train patrol shifts in each house's room. Remember to patrol in order," Lynn explained methodically before quickly ending the meeting. As the meeting concluded, the prefects from each house began to return to their respective rooms in an orderly manner, including Anduin. However, the Slytherin prefects' compartment felt a bit empty due to their small number. Once seated in their house compartment, the sixth-year female prefect, Wendy, and the fifth-year female prefect, Janie, huddled together, whispering. It was clear that the two had a closer relationship. Louis sat awkwardly to the side, unfamiliar with the two female prefects and too intimidated to speak to Anduin. Since being elected as a prefect in his 5th year, Louis had barely spoken to Wendy outside of necessary work exchanges. They both had little interest in student union matters and often neglected their duties, assuming the senior prefects would handle the issues. However, with the start of the new school year, Slytherin had lost 2 prefects, leaving Louis and Wendy unexpectedly in charge. Unaccustomed to responsibility, they were ready to give up. As the 3 prefects sat in a daze, Anduin broke the silence. "You 3, come here. I need to assign some tasks," he said, pulling out a clipboard and speaking with a blank expression. "Ah?" The other 3 prefects exchanged confused glances. Louis and Wendy were particularly taken aback. Why was the newly promoted prefect acting so authoritative? "Didn't you hear me?" Anduin asked impatiently. "Are you talking to us?" Wendy, the 6th-year prefect, mustered some confidence. She wasn't as intimidated by Anduin as Louis was. "We don't seem to know you well. Although you're a famous battle hero, you're still a junior who has just been promoted to prefect." "Wendy Dart, 6th year, half-blood. Your mother is a half-blood witch, and your father is a pure-blood wizard who currently heads the Goblin Liaison Office at the Ministry of Magic. Your best subject is herbology, followed by charms and potions. You passed the OWL exams in these 3 subjects last school year. Your hobbies include studying beauty potions, and you're currently dating Noel de Veron from Ravenclaw. Am I right?" Anduin read from his clipboard, then looked up at Wendy. "I know you very well." End of this chapter. Chapter 254, Thinking Trap. "You." Wendy's face changed suddenly when she heard Anduin's words. The more she listened, the more frightened she became. "How do you know this? It doesn't feel good to have your privacy exposed in public, especially when it involves your deep emotional life. Wendy stared at Anduin sullenly. Anduin didn't answer Wendy directly. Instead, he turned to look at the other two, glanced at the recording board, and read aloud. Louis Allerton, 6th grader, pure blood. Your family ancestors are the 3 Allerton brothers who founded the Sweeping Broom Company. Your parents, as direct descendants of Barnaby Allerton, own part of the company's shares. Best subjects, astronomy, transfiguration. Second best subjects, charms, arithmetic, and divination. You passed the OWL exams in these subjects. Hobbies, Quidditch, but due to your average level, you were not selected for the Quidditch team. Based on the level of a 6th grader, you're not bad, Anduin commented rather pertinently. He didn't care about Louis' ugly expression and turned his head to look at the last 5th grade female prefect. Jane Moria, 5th grade student, mixed race. Your mother is a muggle, and your father is a pure-blood wizard, currently working in the Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes at the Ministry of Magic, specifically the Muggle Issue Mediation Committee. Best subjects, charms, Muggle studies. Second best subjects, ancient runes, potions, transfiguration. These subjects have a good chance of passing the OWL exams. Hobbies, you almost only like reading books, and perhaps due to your parents' influence, you have a strong interest in Muggle culture. From an academic point of view, you are the most outstanding in your grade. Professor Flitwick also mentioned you to me. This year, you will be invited to join the Charms Club. Anduin looked at Jane and smiled. This female prefect was one of the witches he had followed and admired for her dedication to study. Jane, who was named, did not show embarrassment like the other two. Instead, she blushed a little shyly and lowered her head. It was unclear whether it was because of Anduin's praise or because she heard she was invited to join the Charms Club. "What do you want to do after investigating us so thoroughly?" Lou asked, his heart trembling as Anduin recited everyone's details so easily. "It's just some basic information. I haven't done any in-depth mana tests, physical fitness tests, or stress tests." Anduin shook his head helplessly. His intervention time was relatively short, and he couldn't spend too much time on these people, so the information collected wasn't very detailed. "We're asking you what your real intentions are, not questioning whether you know our details or not," Wendy said, now in the same camp as Louis, questioning Anduin together. "You don't have to worry about my intentions. You just need to know that from now on, you will obey my arrangements and follow my instructions. I am someone who values execution and efficiency," Anduin said sharply, taking in their expressions. "Why? Just because you are a battle hero? That was a year ago, and don't you think it's too much to investigate other people's privacy at will?" Wendy, still angry since her love affair was exposed by Anduin, retorted coldly. "That's right. We're all prefects, and we're 1 grade older than you. Why should we listen to you?" Louis added, very dissatisfied with Anduin's attitude. Meanwhile, Jane bowed her head and clasped her fingers without saying a word. As a nerd, she wasn't very communicative and didn't join the debate. "Do you still know that you are prefects?" Anduin raised his head and looked at the two of them coldly. "I would like to know what responsibilities you have fulfilled as prefects." "Wendy, besides leading a group of younger girls to study beauty potions every day, you are flirting with Nordveron at school. You use the student union's arrangements to have trysts during night patrols, and your secret love affair with Duel is known to almost everyone in the Slytherin community. Do you want to know who leaked the secret? It's your stupid owl. Every time you send a love letter, it gets wrongly delivered to the next bedroom. Your classmate next door, afraid of embarrassing you, secretly stuffs it back into your room. Your love letters are almost never sealed, and by the time you see them, they have already been circulated among all the girls in the courtyard." "What?" Wendy stood still, feeling stiff all over after listening to Anduin's words. She thought that Anduin's revelation of her little secret today would kill her on the spot. In fact, she had been the subject of gossip in the entire house for a long time, and only she didn't know it. "As for you, Louis," Anduin cast a cold look at the male prefect next to him. "Apart from playing with astronomical models in the astronomy tower every day, you run to the Quidditch players to show off your family's experimental 6-star broom. Unfortunately, your flying skills are so poor that even if the Quidditch team captain opened the back door for you, you wouldn't make it as a substitute player. And every time you patrol at night, you just go to the astronomy tower to look at the stars. Wendy's neglect of her prefect duties can be attributed to love, but what's your excuse? It's sheer laziness. Facing the two seniors from the same school who were a year ahead of him, Anduin yelled unceremoniously. Lewis, who was called out, blushed and argued loudly. What do you know? You don't understand the situation in Slytherin House at all. Do you think I want this? In Slytherin House, let's just talk about last year. The senior prefects don't care about anything, and the dean is often away. We are just newly promoted prefects, and we can't make decisions. Besides, the students in the academy don't care at all. They don't listen to the prefects. Everyone only cares about themselves. Even if we do our best, we can change nothing. Instead of wasting time on them, we should focus on our own things. Louis yelled angrily, his face red with frustration. He was clearly very disappointed with the current state of Slytherin. This sentiment was shared by most Slytherin students, and in this relatively selfish house, such thoughts easily resonated. The prevailing attitude was to take care of oneself and not worry about others, and these prefects seem to have fallen into that mindset. End of this chapter. Chapter 255, Fear Tech. So, is this an excuse for you to be lazy, play poorly, and be irresponsible? Anduin had no interest in Louis's excuses. To him, it was all sophistry. Just because his teammates didn't work hard, did that give him a reason to slack off? This was a rout. It was desertion. Since this is the case, you are no longer worthy of being prefects. From today onwards, I will take over Slytherin House. Everyone must listen to me, and I will not accept any rebuttals, Anduin declared, his voice cold and emotionless, like a machine. You want to change the entire academy by yourself? I advise you not to be too naive. When I became a prefect, I didn't think about revitalizing the academy. Even senior sister Vanessa couldn't do it. The time of the mysterious man left too many conflicts in our college, which can't be resolved at all, Louis retorted, sensing Anduin's purpose and immediately trying to dampen his resolve. Anduin's sharp eyes suddenly locked onto Louis. If you were my soldier, you would be lying on the ground now, he said, his gaze piercing through Louis. Louis felt a strong, murderous aura envelop him, making him tremble. It seems you are accustomed to losing, so much so that you've become numb to it. I wasted my words reasoning with you, Anduin said, closing his eyes. After a moment, he opened them again, and a wave of magic power slowly spread around him. The three people sitting opposite Anduin felt their world darken, their bodies as cold as winter, shrouded in an indescribable sense of fear, as if facing their deepest fears. Wendy and Jane's teeth chattered involuntarily, Louis's face turned pale, and cold sweat began to ooze from his forehead and back. I said, you do it. Understand? Anduin's voice penetrated their ears like a ghost's whisper. The three nodded quickly, as if they would fall into an endless abyss if they didn't comply. Sure enough, using the fear technique directly was more effective, Anduin thought, curling his lips. He calmed his magic power, and the three in front of him let out a long sigh of relief. Listen to my orders next, Anduin said, putting away the recording board and opening his notebook. After arriving at the school, Louis, you go to the dean to get the password for the common room. Wendy, you are responsible for recording all the new Slytherin students' names during the sorting ceremony, quickly assigning the dormitories, and then handing the list to me. Before the opening ceremony ends, Wendy and Janet will return to the common room ahead of time, clear the seats in the hall, and move them to the corridor leading to the dormitory, blocking the intersection. After the opening ceremony, Louis will lead all the students back to the common room as soon as possible and maintain order. Don't let them run around. Gather everyone in the common room. I have something to say. In the future management of the college, I have only one request. Carry out my orders without any discount. You don't need to take care of anything else. This also needs to be enforced among all the students. If anyone disobeys, record their name and give it to me. Understand? Anduin's tone was devoid of emotion, and he spoke slowly and clearly. Yes, I understand, Wendy replied, her voice trembling as she recovered from her previous fear. The answer should be crisp and clear. If you understand, you understand. If you don't, you don't. Everyone should answer together. Do you understand? Anduin shouted coldly. Understood. The three of them, shaken by Anduin's stern demeanor, quickly replied loudly. Anduin nodded slightly, satisfied, but then noticed Lewis's hesitant expression. He immediately asked, "What's the matter? If you have something to say, just say it." Lewis swallowed nervously, his voice trembling slightly. "It's just that, if you arrange things this way, won't there be a problem with the dean?" Anduin sneered. "Why do you think I took over the position of prefect? Do you think I enjoy managing these messy affairs in the academy?" His tone hinted at something deeper. Hearing Anduin's words, the three of them finally realized that this was the dean's intention. "I promised the dean that we would win the Academy Cup this year. Since I made that promise, I will see it through. Anyone who dares to obstruct me will face the consequences," Anduin declared, his face serious. Recalling Anduin's previous methods, the three present knew he wasn't joking. They hurriedly nodded in agreement. Just then, someone knocked on the door of their compartment. It was Merlin, informing them that it was Slytherin's turn to patrol the train. After hearing the voice outside, the three of them looked at Anduin involuntarily. Only after receiving his permission did Louis and Jane dare to leave the carriage. For the next few hours on the train, apart from patrolling, Anduin explained the follow-up work requirements and management system to the three of them. He knew that to achieve his goals, he needed to unify their thinking first, followed by strict management. As they communicated with Anduin and learned about some of the measures he planned to implement, they realized that this young man, who they had never had much contact with before, was serious this time. After listening to Anduin's management methods, the three of them felt chills down their spines. They didn't dare to voice any objections and could only smile wryly. According to Anduin's methods, it didn't matter whether the prefects were seniors or not. Even they were included in his plans. Soon, the Hogwarts Express train for the new school year arrived. After entering the castle, the prefects quickly got busy according to Anduin's arrangements, while he leisurely made his way to the auditorium like a regular student. This year's opening ceremony was no different from previous ones, but it was evident that there were more new students enrolled than in previous years. There had been quite a few new students last year, but this year there were even more. Professor McGonagall diligently presided over the sorting ceremony for the new school year. Anduin spotted Charlie, who was about to enter school, among the crowd. However, another female freshman caught Anduin's attention. "Nymphadora Tonks," Professor McGonagall called out, and a girl sat on the sorting chair on the podium. End of this chapter. Chapter 256, The Common Room. The girl had long, rare light blue hair, sharp facial features, and lively eyes. What surprised Anduin was that after the sorting had announced she was sorted into Hufflepuff House, Tonks's hair suddenly turned yellow, symbolizing Hufflepuff. This astonished all the little wizards in the auditorium, and Tonks seemed equally surprised by their reactions. She then shook her hair, which turned light pink again. "What's going on?" Anduin asked Vivian curiously. In the college, she was more informative than gossip newspapers. Whenever he wanted to inquire about any news in the wizarding world, Anduin would ask Vivian. She is a born metamorphmagus who can change her appearance freely, which is even rarer than an animagus, Vivian explained enthusiastically when she heard Anduin's inquiry. And, compared to her special ability, her mother's story is even more legendary. Vivian raised her eyebrows at Anduin in a slightly mysterious way, clearly indicating that if he wanted to know more, he should ask her later. I'll make you tell me everything when we get back to the common room, Anduin thought, glancing at Vivian speechlessly. To satisfy her desire to share, he asked, "What's special about her mother, and what about her ability?" Tonks' mother's story is quite famous. Her name is Andromeda Tonks. She was originally a member of the Black family. She is the sister of the arrested Death Eater Bellatrix and the cousin of Sirius Black, who betrayed the Potters. She is most famous for marrying the Muggle-born wizard Ted Tonks after graduating from Hogwarts, which led to her being expelled from the Black family. The Black family has been ashamed of her ever since. But I don't think it's a big deal. Isn't it natural to pursue love? As for her ability, I only know that it seems to be innate, Vivienne narrated the Tonks family's story to Anduin. So that's the case. She's Sirius's niece. But what about her metamorph magus ability? Is this a kind of magic that can be practiced, or is it unique to her? Does it involve a specific magic rune? I really want to study it, Anduin thought. He wasn't very interested in the mess of these pure-blood families, but was more curious about the ability to change one's appearance at will. Judging from Tonks's behavior, she seemed to have a lively personality, so maybe he could find a time to get in touch with her. Although the atmosphere in the auditorium became quite noisy because of this episode, the sorting ceremony was completed in an orderly manner under Professor McGonagall's control, and they moved on to the dinner session. Not long after the dinner started, Wendy came to him and handed Anduin a parchment full of names. It seemed that under Anduin's emphasis, she had completed the assignment very efficiently. "What is this?" Vivienne asked curiously, pulling a lamb chop out of her mouth. "It's nothing, just the freshman list. I'm a prefect now, don't you know?" Anduin replied, looking at Vivienne with a shiny face. "But aren't you the 5th grade prefect? Why did the 6th grade prefect Wendy come over to give you materials?" Vivienne quickly realized something was off. "Hey!" Anduin glanced at her with great interest. "Guess." "Cut, stingy," Vivienne pouted and turned her head in dissatisfaction, continuing to deal with the lamb chops in her hand, unaware of what was coming next. Anduin turned his head to look at Wendy and Jane at the long table. After receiving his signal, the two quickly got up and left the venue. Snape, who was sitting at the teacher's table, also noticed this scene, which piqued his curiosity. He really wanted to know whether making Anduin a prefect would be effective. Unfortunately, the rest of the evening would have to unfold for him to find out. In the following week, Snape was sent by Dumbledore to search for the Death Eaters. Reflecting on this, Snape couldn't help but cast a resentful glance at the white-bearded headmaster, who seemed as serene as ever. As time passed and dinner came to an end, Louis stood up to greet the students at the Slytherin table and led them to the common room. Anduin trailed behind, ensuring no one was left behind. At this time, the young wizards in the Slytherin house were divided into familiar small circles, chatting happily. The new students, in particular, were all excited. However, it wasn't until they entered the common room that they realized something was amiss. As they walked through the narrow passage and entered the main hall of the dungeon, they found that the sofas and seats in the lounge were all gone, leaving only an empty rock meeting place. Even the carpet on the ground had been rolled up. After they fully entered the stone hall, they noticed that all the furniture had been taken away and placed in the corridors leading to the boys' and girls' dormitories on both sides. "What's going on?" a senior wizard asked Louis, looking puzzled. "Why did you block the passage to the dormitory and prevent people from sleeping?" Louis didn't know how to answer because Anduin hadn't informed them of the plan in advance. He had simply given the order and expected them to carry it out. "It's all here. There is going to be a house meeting next. Everyone, line up by grade, with an arm's-length distance between the front, back, left, and right sides. Louis, Wendy, and Janie, hurry up and organize. Time is limited." Anduin commanded, his voice amplified by a sonorous charm, making it deafening in the enclosed room. Everyone, startled by the loud voice, froze for a moment and then stared blankly at Anduin, who was standing at the top of the entrance steps. Even Rosier, Velen, and Vivienne looked at him in bewilderment. They didn't understand why this usually low-key combat hero was suddenly giving orders in such an authoritative tone. It was only now that everyone noticed the prefect badge on Anduin's chest. The freshmen, who had just gone through the sorting ceremony, were curious. They wondered if this was a special ceremony within the house, but seeing the equally confused expressions of the senior wizards next to them, it didn't seem like it. The situation was even more alarming for the former pure-blood wizards in grades 6 and 7. They secretly groaned, wondering what this evil star was planning. Was he finally going to punish them? They had been paying their protection fees honestly every month. Seeing the bewildered looks on everyone's faces, Anduin frowned. "What are you dawdling for? Move quickly. Don't you even know how to line up? Do you need someone to teach you?" End of this chapter. Chapter 257, College Meeting 1. That's right. That's right. The prefects are going to have a meeting in the academy today. Everyone hurry up. Yes, line up. Louis clapped his hands, trying to organize the students. However, he himself didn't really know what it meant to line up, and because he hadn't organized any activities before, his speech was weak and unconvincing. Despite Louis's lack of confidence, the little wizards around him understood what he meant. But was this really a meeting? Did it require blocking all the intersections? This made them feel a little flustered. However, under the command of the three prefects, they still moved lazily. Among them, the pureblood wizards of the senior grades responded the fastest. Anduin rarely had contact with other students, so others were not sensitive to his orders. But in the past 2 years, Anduin had been like a sharp sword hanging over their heads, making them frightened all the time, so his actions were much faster than others. Friends like Vivienne and Velen, who were familiar with him, although they didn't know what he wanted to do, were very cooperative. Anduin looked at the dawdling crowd and knew that he had to direct it himself. These three prefects were completely inexperienced and lacked courage, and even the students in the lower grades seemed to be coaxing children. Now everyone listens to my instructions. Based on my right-hand side, the outermost edge is the first grade, and the left grades are arranged in order from low to high. Facing me, the height is arranged vertically from low to high. I only give you 20 seconds. If you haven't stood up after the time, you will bear the consequences. 2019. Considering that it was indoors, Anduin lowered the volume of some loud spells, but when he spoke, he quietly cast a little fear spell. Although his speech was not as loud as it was at the beginning, it gave people an inexplicable sense of oppression. Coupled with the countdown, some little wizards who felt baffled or indifferent couldn't help but get nervous. But they were used to being loose and alone. The sudden group action made them at a loss for a while, and then it was like a vegetable market. Everyone crowded together to move. Some little wizards couldn't find the team of their grade and were running in circles. Anduin nodded as he looked at the noisy scene. That's right, they were not afraid of being nervous and making mistakes. These could be adjusted slowly later, but they were afraid of being insensitive and unwilling to act. The simplest cueing actually contains the simplest truth, and you can simply observe their sense of purpose and action. So Anduin just looked at the group of little wizards in front of him, sweating and huddled together in order to find their own cue, but still didn't directly command. Instead, he secretly slowed down the countdown speed to let them experience the feeling of acting by themselves and finding the goal by themselves. When the final countdown was over, all the wizards finally formed a complete queue, but it was crooked, with different spacing and heights. It was very uncomfortable to see, and there were also many young wizards who stupidly stood in the wrong queue. You two are in the wrong queue. You are third graders. Why are you running into the fourth grade queue? And you too, you are second graders. Why are you squeezed into the first grade queue? Anduin looked at the queues that had been lined up and began to adjust the roll call one by one, calling the students who did not belong to the corresponding queues back to the correct ones. He adjusted the formation according to their height. It took half a minute to make the queues tidy. In the end, Anduin looked around the crowd. In their eyes, he could see emotions such as puzzlement, curiosity, fear, and nervousness, but the numbness and bewilderment had disappeared a lot. Anduin nodded with some satisfaction, then took out the recording board. Anduin shouted loudly, "Now, from the upper grades to the lower grades, we will the roll call. When your name is called, please respond. Villain Higgs." Villain was taken aback when he heard his name, but quickly realized that his training under Anduin had conditioned him to obey orders instinctively. He immediately shouted, "Here!" With Villain setting an example, the roll call proceeded smoothly. Although some of the younger wizards occasionally reacted slowly, they managed to follow along without much trouble. Anduin's actions, though seemingly simple, just cueing and roll call, were crucial. These exercises were foundational, establishing habits that would shape the relationship between the students and their prefect. They created a sense of boundaries and cultivated obedience, which would later facilitate the formulation of rules and systems, making it easier to instill discipline. Moreover, this period allowed the students to calm down. After responding to the roll call, the little wizards appeared noticeably less nervous. Very well, all members of Slytherin House are present. Today's house meeting will now officially begin, Anduin announced. He combined the recording board and pen in his hand, placed them behind his back, stood upright, and scanned the crowd with sharp eyes. I know many of you are confused and curious about why I called this meeting and what my intentions are. Please remain quiet, and I will address your concerns one by one. Anduin's words reassured the little wizards, easing some of their tension and fear. They watched him intently as he stood solemnly on the steps. First of all, since there are many new students, let me introduce myself, Anduin began, glancing at the younger students on the right. I am a fifth-year student, Anduin Wilson. I was appointed as a prefect this year by the dean and the principal. I know that many of you have heard various nicknames for me, such as the Ghost of the Snake Court or the Ministry of Magic's Fighting Hero. However, I hope that from now on, you will address me as Prefect Wilson or simply Prefect. I am not familiar with most of you, and to many, I might even be a stranger. Although I have been around for a long time, I haven't spoken to many of you, and some of you might not even know my full name. But these things are not important. What matters is that during my tenure as prefect, you will often see me. Now, let's move on to the main topic of today's house meeting, Anduin continued, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. Do you know why I arranged this special meeting today, and why I was appointed as Slytherin's prefect? End of this chapter. Chapter 258, College Meeting. Anduin's question left everyone in the audience bewildered. They exchanged puzzled glances, wondering why his appointment as a prefect had anything to do with them. After all, he was a war hero, and it seemed perfectly reasonable for him to be appointed as a prefect. As for why they were gathered for this meeting, no one had a clue. Because... Anduin's eyes grew colder as he looked at everyone. Because you are a bunch of trash! The crowd erupted into an uproar, whispering among themselves. They had expected Anduin to say something significant, but instead he had insulted everyone. Even the prefects, like Lewis, were stunned and couldn't understand what Anduin was trying to achieve. Silence! Anduin's voice, laced with a cold tone and enhanced by a fear spell, commanded immediate attention. Everyone present fell silent in shock. Am I wrong to call you trash? Look at yourselves. What makes you worthy of being in Slytherin House? You all act like walking corpses, Anduin sneered, his words dripping with sarcasm. If it weren't for your consistent failures, why would Dean Snape waste precious time on you? You? How can you say that? How are we not worthy of Slytherin House? A pureblood wizard with a more flamboyant personality retorted angrily. Oh, you must be Joey Farley, a fourth-year student, Anduin said, glancing at his recording board. It seems you're not convinced. Then tell me, what have you done for Slytherin? What have you done for yourself? Anduin's gaze shifted to Joey. Last year alone, you were confined 3 times for fighting with Gryffindor, costing the Academy 55 points. You also failed 4 subjects in the final exam. At this rate, I doubt you'll pass a single OWL exam next year. To be honest, I should apologize to you. You're not just trash, you're worse than trash. Joey Farley, who had been singled out, blushed but couldn't find any excuses or reasons to refute Anduin's accusations. Joey is indeed not worthy of Slytherin, a wizard next to him said coldly, glancing at Joey before addressing Anduin. These pure-blood wizards tried to suppress other half-blood wizards the year before last. They're useless, but why are you targeting us? We haven't lost points for the Academy. Jim Ferry, 5th year, Anduin said, glancing at his recording board again. He smiled at Jim. I see you don't like pure-blood wizards like them. Aside from causing trouble every day, what else do they do? Don't forget how they treated us the year before last. Anduin, you're a Muggle-born wizard. Don't you hate them? If you ask me, it's time to settle the score with them, Jim Ferry said, glaring at Joey. As soon as Jim spoke, the faces of the other pure-blood wizards around him changed. They remembered how they had bullied Jim a few years ago. Was he really going to target them now? In comparison, Anduin seemed to have a better relationship with the half-blood wizards. The pureblood wizard's legs began to tremble, knowing Anduin's methods and feeling even more desperate. Settle the score? Wouldn't that just make us another purity committee? Anduin sneered and shook his head. Even though you haven't lost the academy too many points, it doesn't change the fact that you're still trash. What do you mean? Jim felt something was wrong and looked at Anduin angrily. Jim Ferry, you didn't lose points for violating school rules last year, and your academic performance is not bad, and your potion scores are among the best, Anduin remarked, glancing at the data on the scoreboard and nodding. Jim raised his head proudly. But Anduin's gaze turned cold as he looked at Jim. Although you didn't lose points for the academy, you didn't think about adding any points either. The only time you did was when Dean Snape showed favoritism towards you. Jim's pride faltered as Anduin continued. If that were all, it would just mean you lack a sense of collective honor. But beyond ignoring honor, you actually plot against your fellow students. At the Easter dinner, you secretly put castor oil laxative in the drink of Leo Malcolm, a sixth-year pureblood wizard, because he once broke a music box during your third year. And another time, several Slytherin students were pranked by Gryffindor students. Just as they were about to retaliate, you reported them to Filch, leading to the arrest of 2 Slytherin students. The reason? One of the pureblood wizard students, in an effort to protect a half-blood student from a dung bomb thrown by Gryffindor, dragged the other student to a dead corner of the corridor. Filch caught them there, and both were fined and given detention. The pureblood wizard who protected his fellow student was Joey Hickman, whom you despise. How do you know all this? Jim Ferry's voice trembled with surprise, his face turning pale. What? It was you, Leo exclaimed. No wonder I had diarrhea for so long after Easter. I thought it was something wrong with the school meals. And I wondered how Filch showed up so conveniently. We were arrested because of you? Are you insane, targeting your own housemates? Joey added, his face flushed with anger. Jim bowed his head, no longer confident. Do you want me to continue? Anduin's cold gaze swept the room. If I do, it will only make you look more pathetic. Arrogance, meanness, stupidity, indifference, laziness, vanity, mutual hatred, selfishness, no sense of honor. This is what I see in you. Maybe you think these traits make you worthy of Slytherin. Humph. Anduin spared no effort in his ridicule. This time, under his scorn, all the Slytherin students present bowed their heads silently. They knew Anduin's harsh words were true, and they were powerless to refute them. End of this chapter. Chapter 259, College Meeting. So, as the new prefect of Slytherin, I called today's meeting because I believe it's necessary to address and resolve these issues within our house, Anduin said, his expression turning serious as he looked at everyone solemnly. What kind of house should Slytherin be? Anduin's voice was firm and powerful, almost magical. Look at the students around you. Do you still want to treat them as your enemies? To add insult to injury? To look at them with cold eyes? Are you willing to continue being so aimless and lost? As Anduin's impassioned words echoed through the stone hall, the wizards couldn't help but raise their heads and look around. For the first time, they truly saw the students beside them, who had been their housemates for years. They saw not just familiar faces, but a shared sense of frustration and a spark of something new and exciting. Answer me, are you still willing to be aimless and lost? Anduin's cold voice rang out again. The students looked at each other, a desire to speak out growing within them, but they hesitated. They were afraid of disappointment, afraid that their hopes would be dashed once more. Answer me. Anduin's voice was even more powerful this time, instilling them with courage. Velen, standing in the corner, felt his blood surge and was about to respond when someone else beat him to it. I don't want to. Joey Farley, a pureblood wizard known for causing trouble, shouted with red eyes in response to Anduin's question. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to. Following Joey's lead, the other young wizards joined in, their voices growing louder and more rhythmic. They raised their fists high, shouting, I don't want to. The continuous shouting allowed them to vent their long-suppressed frustrations and brought courage to everyone around them. Even the 3 prefects assigned to maintain order joined in excitedly. Seeing the crowd's enthusiastic response, Anduin nodded silently, surprised by Joey's reaction. Very good. Anduin stretched out his hands, and the arena slowly quieted down. It seems you are not hopeless. Though you may still be lost, there is potential for change. Remember, we are Slytherins. Anduin's deep eyes scanned everyone. We were born in the quagmire. We yearn for power. We are full of ambition. We are strong and calm. We are graceful and self-restrained. We never regret. Glory to Slytherin. Glory to Slytherin. Glory to Slytherin. Glory to Slytherin. The crowd, which had just quieted down, shouted the slogan loudly again, their voices clearer and more determined than before. Anduin's speech, though not as loud, made everyone even more excited and fervent. They hadn't felt the taste of glory for a long time. Even Vivian, who had become more reserved, and Ibrahimovic, who was usually shy, now blushed and echoed loudly. The morale was high, and Anduin was pleased with the audience's reaction. He waved his hand to signal for quiet, but the young wizards continued to cheer for a while, too excited to stop immediately. "It seems you have made up your minds to change?" Anduin looked around with questioning eyes. The young wizards, still in a state of excitement, nodded eagerly. "That's good," Anduin nodded, then changed the topic. "But it's not enough to just shout slogans. We must take effective actions to bring about real change. And if you want to make real changes, you have to listen to me. In fact, you must listen to me and complete what I say next without compromise. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." Anduin's voice turned cold and stern. "No problem. Tell us what we should do," someone responded. "As long as you can deliver on your promises, I am willing to follow your arrangement." The people, whose confidence had been bolstered by Anduin moments ago, were not frightened by his sudden change in tone. Instead, they instinctively chose to trust and obey him, all agreeing in unison. "Okay," Anduin nodded, then reached out and summoned a blank curtain, which slowly unfolded on the steps. "If you want to make a real change, you must first be firm in your determination to accomplish two goals. First, winning this year's Academy Cup, although this is just a secondary goal. Second, everyone's average grade must be above an E. This is the key point, and in order for you to achieve these two goals, I will do whatever it takes." Anduin's sharp gaze swept across everyone's faces, causing many young wizards to twitch uncomfortably. Listening to Anduin's two goals, the Slytherin students couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Winning the Academy Cup as a secondary goal? They were used to being third place all year round, so this was no easy task. And the second goal was even more daunting. All students achieving grades above an E. That meant good grades in all subjects, not just passing. Even in the current Slytherin house, few could achieve that. Ignoring the hesitant looks from the crowd, Anduin continued, "To accomplish these goals, you must implement 3 parts. Be mentally prepared, as I will not show mercy to anyone who violates them. First, I will re-establish the organizational structure and corresponding standards within the college. Second, I will issue relevant disciplinary guidelines that everyone must strictly abide by. Those who violate them will be punished. Third, Slytherin College will implement the 2 sessions and 1 exam system, and everyone must strictly adhere to it." As Anduin spoke, 3 lines of text appeared on the huge curtain: organizational structure, disciplinary rules, and 2 sessions and 1 exam. The audience looked at what Anduin displayed and fell into confusion. They understood each word individually, but together they made little sense. Next, I will give you detailed explanations one by one. The first is the organizational structure. Anduin pointed casually, and the line of text labeled organizational structure on the curtain became larger. End of this chapter. Chapter 260, College Meeting 4. The establishment of a brand new organizational structure is primarily to facilitate management and ensure the stable improvement of everyone's performance, Anduin began. Firstly, there are 7 grades in the college. I will appoint a grade leader for each grade. These leaders will form a college committee with me and 3 other prefects. Of course, a prefect may also be appointed as a grade leader. These team leaders will assist us in managing the grades. They will be responsible for handling conflicts, organizing meetings, managing discipline, and other related issues. If any mistakes occur, I will hold the team leader accountable. Students in the same grade should first approach their team leader to resolve any problems. If the team leader cannot solve the issue, they can come to me. Therefore, the grade team leader must perform their duties with fairness, justice, and transparency. I will appoint the first team leader directly, and if they fail, I will remove them and call for a re-election. The little wizards in the audience listened attentively to Anduin's explanation and gradually understood the purpose of the new system. The role of the group leader was to help manage internal disputes, and they applauded this initiative. Now I will call out the names, and those called will stand at the front of the queue. They are your grade leaders for this year. 7th grade leader, Villain Higgs. When Villain heard his name, he immediately stepped forward and stood at the forefront of the line. He was not a timid person and was willing to take responsibility. Most of the other wizards in his grade were satisfied with this choice, as Villain had a good personality and got along well with most of them. However, some pureblood wizards were a bit upset, feeling that this was just a way to push forward those with good relationships. They feared that Slytherin would become Anduin's domain, but they dared not voice their dissatisfaction, knowing Anduin's strength was no joke. 6th grade prefect, Wendy Dart. Although you are a prefect, you must focus your work within the grade. Wendy nodded. Anduin had already spoken to her on the train, so she stood in the front row neatly. 5th grade prefect, Jenny Moria. You are in the same situation as Wendy, but you need to learn to take responsibility. Again, it was a half-blood wizard, which made some pure-blood wizards uncomfortable. They wondered why the choices were either those with good relationships or half-blood wizards. Were they really going to be excluded? However, just as they were lost in their thoughts, Anduin announced a name that surprised them. 4th grade prefect, Joey Hickman. What? The first person to feel incredulous was Joey. He looked up at Anduin in surprise, wondering if he had misheard. Although you have caused trouble for the college, you are not without merits. At least you are loyal. I hope that the change can start with you. Lead by example, take good care of your classmates, improve your grades, and stop causing trouble. I'll be keeping an eye on you, Anduin said solemnly, staring at Joey. Yes, Chief? Joey found himself trusted and was suddenly filled with enthusiasm. His face flushed, and he couldn't help but respond. Anduin nodded and continued appointing the rest of the team leaders. 3rd year leader, Ib Gamper. 2nd grade leader, Suzanne Sissoko. 1st grade leader. Anduin glanced at the list of freshmen. Shadi Sidibe, I have chosen you as the leader of the freshmen before I have inspected them. If you don't perform your duties, I will pick another. The freshman Shadi, whose name was called, nodded excitedly, feeling a pressure in her heart. She looked around, determined to prove herself. As she glanced back at her classmates, she noticed that everyone was giving her encouraging looks, which greatly boosted her confidence. The above is the appointment of the group leaders for each grade, Anduin announced. But remember, these positions are temporary. If you don't perform well, you will be removed at any time. At the same time, I hope that when your team leader is carrying out their duties, you will fully cooperate with them. Don't let other grades look down on you. If you ignore your team leader, I will intervene personally. I don't think any of you want to see that happen. The atmosphere was a mix of excitement and nervousness. Both the newly elected team leaders and the other young wizards were unsure of what these new arrangements would bring. Now, let me explain the organizational structure of the second part. Representative Kate, Anduin continued, ignoring the psychological changes the young wizards were experiencing. Branch representative? What's that? The little wizards, who were still processing the concept of team leaders, were suddenly intrigued by this new term. The grade group leader is responsible for your life and discipline management, while the department representatives are responsible for your academic progress, Anduin explained. A subject representative is a wizard with excellent grades selected from each class. They will guide you in the study of the corresponding subjects. Hogwarts has 7 main courses and 3 elective courses, so 10 wizards will be selected as subject representatives. We will try to ensure that there is 1 representative per class, with no overlap. These representatives are like secondary teachers in your college. If you encounter any problems in your studies, you can go to the department representative for help. If a subject is particularly challenging, I will arrange for the department representative to provide additional support. Additionally, every night, self-study time will be arranged in the common room of the college. During this time, department representatives will assist students with their homework. After Anduin's explanation, everyone understood the role of the department representatives. However, another question arose in their minds. If the common room becomes a study room at night, what will happen to their leisure time? But Anduin, unconcerned with their minor worries, continued his explanation. Because department representatives need to maintain a high level of proficiency in their subjects, I will only appoint 5th and 6th grade wizards to these positions. I will avoid selecting 7th grade wizards, as they need to prepare for their final exams, and I don't want to add too much pressure on them. There may be conflicts with other grade leaders and prefects, so everyone must be mentally prepared. Now, I will announce the subject representatives for each class. Representative of Herbal Medicine, Wendy Dart. Holding 3 positions simultaneously will be challenging, but this is a testament to our trust in you. Good luck. Wendy nodded seriously, understanding the weight of her new responsibilities. It seemed she would have less time to study beauty potions this year, and her dating life might also take a back seat. End of this chapter.